World War I was one of the most graphic wars in human existence, with over 40 million casualties and catastrophic effects like World War II and communism. Without it, today's map of Europe would not be the same. By now you should know that the First World War started in 1914 and ended in 1918. First things first, let's look at a big overview of the countries involved in the war. On the Central side, we have Germany, a massively powerful country with the most up-to-date technology in the world at the time, and is ruled by the egotistical madman Kaiser Wilhelm II. Allied to Germany is Austria-Hungary, who was once a very strong empire but was now weak and divided. Also in the Central Powers is Italy, a very corrupt country. The only thing they could do well at the time was bake pizza and sustain a mafia. On the other side, however, there is a triple entente with France, a democratic country with a weak government who had just a few years earlier been obliterated by Germany and were very bitter about it. Allied to France, we have Britain, a democracy with an immense empire but who wanted to stay away from the rest of Europe in isolation, peacefully eating crumpets and drinking tea. Lastly, but not less important, is Mother Russia. This is a complicated one as they were still trying to figure out what they wanted to do with their overly sized country. So, back on the topic, how did the war start? I hope you remember that it all started on June 28, 1914, when Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand thought it was an amazing idea to go for a ride in the beautiful city of Sarajevo on the anniversary of the defeat of the Serbs. Him and his wife were riding in an open-roof car when their driver took a wrong turn. Then, as if it was written in the stars, Galilopi from the Serbian terrorist group the Black Hand bombed the open-roof car in which Franz and his wife were happily driving, ultimately killing them both in the process. Now, how does the assassination of this crusty old Archduke lead to a world war, you may ask? Wouldn't he have died anyways? Now, to answer that question, yes, he would have died either way because, you know, we all do. But to find out how this led to a massive world war, you'll need some more background information first. Austria had always hated Serbia and had attempted to declare war on them over 25 times in the past 4 years. Yeah, it was tense. They used this assassination as an excuse to send them a lovely ultimatum on July 23rd, which stated that they had to let the Austrians invade their country to supposedly find the gang that killed the Archduke and beat the living daylight out of them. If they didn't allow this, Austria would declare war on them and things would get graphic. Like any sane person would do, they respectfully declined the ultimatum, hoping that Austria would have some mercy on them and let it slide. So Austria, knowing that they would not accept that ultimatum, asked Germany,
Yo, Germany, do you think you could, maybe just help us in the likely case of a war no matter what we do, even if it's not exactly the best decision in the world and could potentially end up in a global disaster?
Nein.
Please?
Nein!
Nothing will go wrong, I promise.
Okay, gut.
So Germany gave Austria the famous blank check, essentially saying that no matter what Austria did, Germany would support them either way. And from here on, things only went downhill. As a response, Serbia called Mother Russia to mobilize its army, making Germany initiate what they thought of as an excellently thought-out Schlieffen Plan. The Schlieffen Plan was a plan that Germany developed in the early 1900s, which was a step-by-step plan on how to fight a two-front war. Their idea was to sneak through neutral Belgium, who they thought were too occupied being fascinated with their waffles, to see them passing through and attack France from the north. Then, when they had the weak French croissants and baguettes defeated in no time, they would take their trains back to Mother Russia to defeat the Ushanka-wearing Russians who were supposedly still mobilizing. Seems like nothing could go wrong at all. Or could it? Spoiler alert, things went pretty wrong. Turns out, the Belgians were not so preoccupied with their Monaco peace and saw the Germans sneaking in. Who would have thought? But Belgium was tired of watching wars pass and wanted to get their hands dirty. So, as we could say, they called their British friends over for help, who kindly accepted due to the Treaty of London and came rushing over to help fight the Germans. So now we had the croissant-eating French, waffle-eating Belgians, and crumpet-eating British fighting the Germans, who were kinda unprepared. This group was a lot stronger than Germany had ever anticipated, and it managed to slow them down immensely, something their oh-so-well-thought-out Schlieffen Plan did not take into account. Meanwhile, on the east side of Europe, Mother Russia had already started mobilizing their army, and was now fighting against a small group of Germans assigned to keep the Russians out. Now the Germans were weak and tired after having fought on the west side for so long, and didn't stand a chance in hell defeating the Russians. So anyways, let's take a look at Germany around 1917. Here's the overview. On the west, you got scared by strong forces attacking you, mainly Britain, which quickly resorted into trench warfare, lasting around 4 years with trenches stretching all along the border of Switzerland. In the east, you're still fighting Russia, not doing too bad, except the cold is really hitting hard. The whole population of your country is also starving and starting strikes because all of the goodies you wanted to import are being blocked by British naval blockade. What's to do? Maybe bombing some British ships coming to and from the US with supplies could weaken Britain, right? What could possibly go wrong? So, Germany bombed all these ships, the US got mad, and with their insanely powerful military, they attacked Germany as well. Perfect. As a last hope, Germany started a last push on the west called the Ludendorff Offensives, but were being beaten up by so many countries that they had to surrender on November 11, 1918. So listen carefully. At the end of the war, the victors met at the Palace of Versailles in France to discuss the peace treaty, but the ones who had a say were France, Britain, and the US. The French Prime Minister, Georges Clemenceau, wanted revenge, and wanted to punish the Germans for what they had done to their amazing country, weakening them so much that they would never invade France again. Woodrow Wilson was the president of the US and was once a history professor. All he wanted was world peace and a happy ending for everyone. Little did he know, this definitely did not happen. David George, the Prime Minister of England, didn't really care about Germany but still wanted to trade with them. So Georgie acted as the middle ground between Wilson and Clemenceau. Finally, after months of discussion between the delegates, the terms of the Treaty of Versailles were finally deliberated. Get ready, because this one hit Germany really hard. So first, Germany was to accept all blame for the war and have a weakened army, so not to be able to start another big war. They also had to stay away from France, losing their land in the process. Not only this, but Germany had to pay a debt of over £5.6 million, which eventually led them to printing more money, resulting in Germany becoming bankrupt. No biggie, all this treaty sparked was some young boy to, commit genocide. Other than this, a few more important things were taken away from Germany, but I think you get the point, right? So, what are we to deduce from all of this? That a worldwide war is a big disaster and that it should never be repeated. Only for Germany to do the same thing again a few